Welcome back to Master the Marketplace with Kaspien.
All right, we're ready to go. We're ready to rock. So we've got the Kaspien executive team today. So let's start first by introductions. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Kaspien as part of the executive team here. And let's go with a round of introductions. So Mitch, introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Kunal. Mitchell Bailey, Chief Operating Officer at Kaspien. Been here for 10 years, close to a decade. Yeah.
All right, Lisa M.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Kunal. Thanks, Mitch. Lisa Meisenbacher, CTO at Kaspien. I've been here just about 6 months now. So I'm super excited to be here as well as to have this little fireside chat today.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Kunal.
Brock, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I'm Brock Walchek. I'm the CFO of Kaspien. I've been here for almost 2.5 years now. Excited for the chat today. I didn't bring a candle to make it a true fireside chat, but looking forward to talking today.
Yeah.
And I'm Lisa
You can
Weidman.
already see the kind of jokes that we have. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
So I was really hoping for that candle too, Brock. I'm Lisa Weidman. I'm the Chief People Officer here at Kaspien and have been on board for about 1 year and 3 months now.
Excellent. And don't worry, we will get this cadence going. We've never done a podcast with, 5 people on the call. So we'll figure out a cadence in which, we will talk in line and everything. That'll happen. All right, so let's get going. So, exciting news for all of you. We, have been working pretty hard. All your teams have been working really hard over the last year. We've, repositioned Kaspien as a platform of software tech-enabled services centered around marketplace growth through our various business models. We achieved some really good numbers from a financial perspective last year as well. And really the cherry on top was a fundraise that we did recently, from the public markets at, $13.5 million to, at some level, indicate where our future is. So I'd love to chat with all of you here about that fundraise and talk about all the aspects of how we're going to deploy the capital, how are we going to work with our teams internally, where are some of these investments going to go, and really just kind of round it up for everyone watching and listening to this today. But let me just, before we even get there, I'd love to just start, man, maybe get your views, Mitch, as the operating officer here, is where do you see the future of maybe e-commerce as a whole, going over the next 4, 5, 10 years, just to sort of kind of round off or get started on, let's think about the big picture first without talking about Kaspien.
Yeah. So I think what we experienced over the course of last year, given the pandemic, is significant foresight and foreshadowing into where the market is heading. The pandemic, we know it expedited a significant amount of e-commerce growth and centralized it in that one short period of time because that's the world needed that. So I think there's a lot of new buyers and new entrants leveraging e-commerce channels that maybe historically hadn't been. So and what we experienced is those are repeat customers. Those are repeat buyers. So I'm continue to be very bullish on the general volume and GMV going through e-commerce. We've also experienced there is more competition, and competition is going to enable more innovation. It's going to create more competitive pricing through these different e-commerce channels. When you get a competitive environment going, the way to win is you improve and you get better. So things with that Walmart is doing, and they continue to capture some market share. Target, they continue to capture market share, and we actually saw Amazon's share over the general e-commerce sector go down. It shrunk, and we haven't seen something like that for several years. So we are seeing a more competitive environment with these big marketplace platforms. Shopify is another one. Shopify is growing and gaining more traction, and they're making it easier and removing barriers for direct to consumer sites to be built. So I think with that, there's just a lot of movement. Another huge thing that's going on is this brand aggregator strategy. Through the pandemic, there was, my perspective is there was so much money that was sitting on the sidelines from private equity, from venture capital, and they were looking for investable markets. E-commerce was certainly an investable market through that period of time. So we've all seen these numbers and figures about how many billions of dollars have awoke from the sidelines and now are going into this marketplace aggregate or brand aggregation strategy on not just Amazon, but Amazon and beyond. So there is a lot of eyes, there is a lot of movement and a lot of activity occurring in the e-commerce space, which will certainly create an interesting environment as we go forward.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And actually, that's a good, my perspective is very similar as well. My view on the future of e-commerce, and I've said this pretty vocally to you folks and to outside as well, is that it just comes down to centralization, management across multiple e-commerce channels. What I mean by that is really my view of the next generation brands will be those that are built digitally native, and the management of those brands will happen online across multiple omni-channel distribution mechanisms. That includes marketplaces such as Walmart, Amazon, eBay, Target, direct to consumer, potentially brick and mortar as well, all managed in a centralized manner and using technology as a true differentiator relative to everyone else for some of the reasons you mentioned, such as the competition is getting hard, it's getting more expensive to acquire a cost of a customer, and so technology is a great differentiator. Mm-hmm. And this aggregation strategy makes sense from the perspective of it lets you do this at scale if you can manage a number of brands together as opposed to doing them individually. But maybe this is a good, I have two questions, one for Lisa M and then for Brock as well, is maybe for Lisa M, like how do you see the role, like you saw my view, but what do you see the role of technology, in this aggregation strategy, but just in general for how brands should be managing their operations going forward? Like, where do you see tech play a role there?
Thanks for the question, Kunal. Wow, I could spend hours on that topic, but to be brief, I think timing and context are everything, especially in our sector, as well as globally, given the COVID pandemic. I like to see the bright side of things, and I think given the variables and what's going on globally, I have never been in my career at a point where technology is more front and center, not only to the global economy, but to scale our business in a seamless and productive way, and to be a shining example, not only for our business sector, but really software as a service globally. And I would say it's especially opportune for us, given that we caught the wave of a growing number of private equity investments occurring in software as a service. And especially in the e-commerce space, I think technology can be a vehicle to address two things in parallel: grow our business, become more successful, and at the end of the day, delight and position our customers for even more success in this sector. And I could go on and on and on about the technology and the use cases that we can leverage, but certain things come to mind that I want us to be positioned for success in. One being AI, ML. Two being, looking far ahead in the future into quantum computing. And three, looking at use cases potentially to solve critical business problems leveraging blockchain. And, I think technology is going to have a huge role in the global economy, specifically in our business sector, to be that vehicle to move the whole economy and our business sector forward. So in short, that's how I would
Yeah,
answer the question.
yeah, you make some good points, Lisa. I mean, I haven't even thought about the applications of quantum computing and blockchain to all the work that we're doing as part of our marketplace growth platform. But I can see just, so many use cases where they're potentially that could add more value to the optimization and growth of our brands on the platform. And certainly looking forward to kind of seeing how that roadmap plays out over time. And Brock, to the other question that I wanted to ask, around the brand aggregation strategy was like, who do you think is going to win in this space? I mean, every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there right now is raising money when it comes to and with the value proposition of we're going to acquire brands, Amazon brands, we're going to aggregate them, we're going to grow them. I mean, is this a bubble? What are your thoughts as the CFO here?
Well, I think what's the term? Long the space, short the froth. There's a lot of opportunity there's a lot of opportunity for these brand aggregators, but ultimately not every aggregator and not every brand is going to be created equal. So when I think about our experience in the marketplace over these last 12 years, is we've been able to develop a very deep spike in this space. And one area that we've gone where it's been incredibly challenging is the breadth of our portfolio is vast relative to a lot of our competitors, and being able to optimize these brands and manage them from a cash conversion cycle, an inventory turn perspective, a margin perspective, and across like orders on a daily basis across brands, like that takes a lot of operational investment and technology investment. And to be able to scale in the way we have, like that's setting a strong foundation for us to be successful in this space. I think a lot of the aggregators, there's some are clearly leading the pack, and right now I think there's a lot of excitement in the space. But if you fast forward the tape, X number of months or maybe years forward, there's going to be some challenge really operating and scaling these businesses and making them sustainable. So there's a huge opportunity in front of us, both in the near term to use some of our home turf advantage to really understand what brands make the most sense to look into, and then in long term, using our scale to help manage more of these brands outside of our current portfolio and outside of our universe right now. I think we're really well positioned to take advantage of.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on this. People don't realize how difficult it is to optimize and grow brands on marketplaces. And more importantly, doing it at scale, requires a lot of investment in people, in technology, in process, which companies like Kaspien have done and have the experience in doing over the last 12 years. And so to complement our strategy with a brand acquisition strategy, it's a lot easier for us to get in as opposed to someone who's just raised a bunch of money. You can't just go buy your way into experience, into technology through that capital. It takes time and effort and testing, and it's a huge operation that has to be deployed. So I completely agree with you. I think that's where we have the edge in this market relative to others. And if people didn't get where I'm going with this conversation, but that's two areas that we want to invest in with our new fundraise. We want to continue to invest in our technology, make our value chain a lot more intelligent through all the points that Lisa mentioned, but then also continue to grow our current businesses, but then complement that with looking at opportunities to acquire brands and grow inorganically. And the next question, associated with that, maybe is for Lisa W. Is Lisa, a lot of what we did last year was stabilize the organization, make sure that we built the right culture to tied back to Kaspien's new strategy, to our platform. And now we're kind of moving into this phase of new capital growth. So how should the company evolve now as we think about, and how should the culture evolve? How should people evolve as we think about moving from growth to scale?
That's a great question, Kunal. Thank you. I would say it's a multi-pronged approach. First and foremost, we have to keep what we do well stable and make sure that we're really strong internally, keep that strong culture and continue to integrate that into everything that we do. I think in general, there's a lot of things changing in the workforce right now with the pandemic, with, as things open up, as people return to work, as we scale, as we move into this new space for this business, we're going to look and feel a little bit differently. That doesn't mean we completely change and completely change our culture. We have to keep the great culture that we have, but we've got to be able to integrate remotely and onboard really well, keep people excited about the organization. So I see that through, a strong onboarding process, through training, through different learning opportunities, through, the look and feel of, our belief system, the way we think about the world through our leadership principles, through our mission and our vision. All of that gives us strength as we move forward to scale an organization.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and that's been something on my mind as well just lately. Is how do you change an organization from where it is to where we're going, and not so much change as opposed to evolve, I would say. And like you mentioned, is maybe the basics have to stay the way they are, but you've got to add on to that elements of better onboarding, training, because our team sizes are going to grow now. Maybe we need more leadership opportunities for people. Managers will have to be, will step up and lead larger teams now, because we're going to get more people. If we have to acquire a company, we'll be integrating folks from outside into Kaspien. And what does that mean for the existing employees? And so there are all these other elements that come on top of what we have preserved already. And so how should we start thinking about some of those elements would be an interesting opportunity and challenge for this executive team going into next year, in my view. That's great. So, just again, open question to everyone around, this brand acquisition strategy that we are looking into is we already have partners that we work with right now, and we serve them in multiple business models, and so how should we think about kind of separating our acquisitions from the partners that we currently work on? Are there certain avenues that we should be focusing on when it comes to acquisitions? Like, how should we be thinking about where do we grow and how do we grow? I'd just love to get your opinions, thoughts on how would we complement some of our growth initiatives to what we're already doing.
Yeah, I can start there and just give some high level thoughts. It's a great question, and I think the way that we're thinking about it holistically is how do we create more value, not only for Kaspien and our shareholders, but how do we create value for brands and consumers? And if we focus on value creation, then we're going to be making insightful decisions based on what is the opportunity to unlock that type of value. So, I mean, we have a large portfolio of brands that we currently work with and partner with and support, not all of which would be, great candidates to bring into the Kaspien umbrella from an ownership standpoint. So, I think there are significant opportunities where we have experienced pain points and lived through challenges that if we were to acquire or bring brands into the Kaspien umbrella, that we would be able to avoid and kind of allow those brands to avoid going forward. And ultimately bringing those entities together, we're solving some of those challenges and we're unlocking synergies that will create more additional inherent value. And that could be through operational efficiencies, that could be through processes that have been scaled, or creating applications that have scaled, and really focusing on bringing brands together or entities together and creating an environment that 1 + 1 = 3. And if we can focus on that and make decisions based on that, then it will be a benefit for customers. It will be a benefit for the brands. It will be a benefit for the people that likely spent invested significant time and energy into building a brand, and it's allowing them to take it to that next level and grow that even better.
Yeah, I mean, my view, just to add to whatever you said, Mitch, is that Caspian at some level wants to serve a brand throughout its life cycle, right? And we, when a brand has an unmanaged third-party channel, we are there to serve them. As they evolve and become more sophisticated, they want to take their operations in-house, we're there to serve them through our set of software applications that we can deploy to them through our software as a service business model. And we're there through their journey. If they're trying to launch a second product to market, we can help them with that. If they're trying to expand to another marketplace, we can help with them. That's what makes us a true one-stop shop. And so the way I look at it is, this brand acquisition strategy is nothing but an extension of the same life cycle. Is like, as the brand is going through the evolution and now they're deciding to exit, Kaspien is there with them through that process as well. So we are consistently there through the life cycle of our brand, and we can serve them through that journey and give them optionality at the end of it, depending on where they want to do and their goals that they want to achieve as a brand. So that's my kind of secondary perspective to everything that you said, but I'd love to hear from others too. Like, how do you folks think about acquisitions in the context of serving our brands from adding them value?
It's a good question, and agree with everything that Mitch and Kunal mentioned. But when you think about the technology and the expertise we've been able to develop as the brand owners, their expertise is building a product that people love. They're incredibly passionate about that product, and for us to be able to take care of all the stressful items that come into having a successful marketplace strategy takes a load off their mind at the early innings of their brand's life cycle, and to now have the opportunity to help them get through those final innings of their life cycle, I think it just provides that much more value add to the ecosystem that we're creating here.
Right. I mean, speaking of technology again, I know we talk about our tech and just tech in general, but let's also talk a little bit about data, right? Because I think data is also going to be a key differentiator in how next generation brands are managed on marketplaces. Lisa M., what's your perspective on the value, the use of data in helping better insights and decision making as it relates to running brands' operations on marketplaces?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kunal, for the question. My perspective on data is really the same, consistent with my overall perspective on technology. Data is king right now. The prize at the end of the rainbow is who can leverage the data to provide that business value, to delight our customers, to solve critical business problems, and to differentiate ourselves not only in our marketplace, but globally. And everyone is chasing after the holy grail as far as data is concerned. Data integrity is an issue, as we've seen. That is nothing unusual to any specific organization. And I think other sort of technologies can enhance the profitability of the data or the value of the data for the customers or other organizations through, you can leverage blockchain, you can leverage AI ML for data integrity and for greater insights on the data. So I think the technologies are very much intersecting, with the data being the end result of the technology behind the data, as well as one, what business problem you're solving with the data, and two, what is the value in the eyes of the customer as far as what that data means to them. I mean, it can be very important to us, but if it's not solving a business problem outside of the walls of Kaspien, and it's not providing unique value, then ultimately our customers are the judge of that.
Right, right. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. And that's again an area where, Caspian has an edge out
Mhm.
there is we have a lot of data,
Mhm.
and the opportunity to be able to leverage that data effectively
Mhm.
to achieving our mission, is hopefully will be a seamless process for a company like ours, in my view at least.
Mhm.
And because we have access to the data, and as we continue to invest in our tech to leverage that data better, that could further help enhance the value proposition we provide to our brand partners.
Yeah, and I would say this: it's all about the context. I would say we are well
Hmm.
positioned for success with our data. We're still a relatively young company, which puts us in an
Hmm.
advantage as far as how we harness our data. We're dealing with, maybe a decade of data rather than 3 decades of data. And the more data you have, the more complex it is to harness it to its best potential. So I would say we are well on our way to provide more value adds internally as well as to our customers with our data assets.
Right, right. No, I agree. I agree. I read a statistic recently. It was I think it was on Shopify. They published some predictions for 2020.
Mhm.
And as part of the predictions, they mentioned that, to Mitch's point earlier, that the cost to acquire a customer, continues to go up. And because of all the competition that has come into e-commerce and will continue to come in as the penetration of online retail exceeds or will continue to, increase over time. So what's the solution to that? The solution, they said, was, focus on loyalty. Don't focus on acquisition.
Mhm.
And really, what's going to be important for brands of the future is to really think about how do you retain customers as opposed to how do you acquire new customers. Now, in our retail model, at some level, you're acquiring a transaction each at every point of time, right? Every time you have to fight for a sale. But that sort of solves itself in our subscriptions business model because you acquire the customer once and then we are sort of serving them. No doubt we have to continue to drive volume for them as well. But what are your thoughts on the role of brand loyalty in the future, retention of customers, as opposed to this customer acquisition, debate that's been happening there? And so, love to just get your views on acquisition versus retention as it relates to brand loyalty in the future.
Well, I think like generally speaking, retention is an outcome of value. So I mean, we 100% and in the age old statistics of it's exorbitantly less expensive to retain a customer or upsell a customer than it is to acquire a new one. So I think just bringing it back to our continual focus on and centering ourselves in our mission to ensure that every day we're getting better at growing and optimizing brands on today's leading marketplaces. If we're doing that and centering ourselves, that retention is an outcome that will follow. I will kind of tie this back to some of the strategic pivots that we've made as an organization over the last 13 years since our existence is we continue to focus and architect our solutions with the brand or our customers and partners in mind. And a lot of these strategic shifts that we've made have been with that point. So starting in more of this, mass distribution retail model that we did, it actually was founded in a dropship model, and we realized that wasn't the best result for brands. So what do? We found a way to expand our wholesale strategy, and we really continued to grow that. And then we started developing software to better support brands in our retail model. And brands started to recognize that, hey, maybe we want to transition the way that we're interacting with the marketplace. So we started supporting them in an agency model, and now we're selling them software, and now brands are starting to think about strategic exits. So if we continue to walk alongside and partner with brands and focus on what their needs are, our value and our value proposition should be continuing to evolve over time, and that increases, number one, our renewal rates and keeping those partners in the ecosystem longer, and it's going to inherently increase the lifetime value of those partners because we continue to support them for a longer period of time. So yeah, I guess tying it back again to the philosophy behind it is, if we can start with the partner and work backwards from that, attrition will be an outcome, or retention will be an outcome, excuse me.
I think you said it really well, and love to get other perspectives here too, because when we think about kind of OKRs or think about metrics or thinking about any of those aspects of how do we measure success on anything that we're doing, there should always be two levers. There should always be a quantity measure and a quality measure. And if I have to tie back what you said back to this framework around quantity versus quality, I mean, your retention is your quality, right? At some level, it's like what is the quality bar that you are setting for yourself as it relates to the quantity that you're driving in from an acquisition perspective, and they both have to go hand in hand. So you can't just have an acquisition goal that says, well, I'm going to bring more brands into the table, but if your quality suffers and they're not retained, and so the value add has to happen across both the aspect of we're going to get in more brands, we're going to scale that way, but the quality has to be high. And I generally like to use that framework for typically anything that we set KPIs around. Is like there's a quantity measure, but where's the quality bar around that as well? And so Lisa W, maybe get your perspective here too, just because it might even tie back to retention of talent and acquisition of talent, and sort of how do you think about the world as it relates to growing organizations, scaling organizations, especially in e-commerce. And the reason I say e-commerce is because there is such an agility aspect to this space. It's so fast-paced. It's like a startup, even if you're a big company. How do you think about some of these elements that we're just talking about?
Yeah, just listening to this, I mean, I can tie all of this back to our employees, and retention of our employees and acquisition of new employees. Right there, you need both. You need both to be positioning the way we are to scale. As we're listening through, what's happening in tech and how we take care of our brands, all of that is our people at the end of the day. And I think it's pretty cool to say that we have experts in-house here and ready to do that. And we have the ability to, and we're just in this great position to be able to do more of that. So I think you absolutely need both. And you also have to keep it interesting. I think about our space and, the type of people that we attract. We have to keep it challenging. We have to, in a good way, in a motivating way. We have to be innovative, thinking through just our leadership principles in how the way we interact with partners, the way in which we do business. It's everything, it's everything right there. It pretty much sums it up. We're here to do all of those things. And if we can attract the right people that align with all our leadership principles, we'll be that much more powerful.
Yeah, I think you said it right, which is, we've got our mission, we've got a vision for the future, our big, hairy, audacious goal. We've got a set of leadership principles, and that's kind of the glue that has to align everything that we do for the partners and everything that we do for our employees. So everything around, I know I'm talking about acquisition, retention as it relates to our brand partners. Those same principles apply to our employees. The engagement experience for employees is a quality metric. The retention outcome is a quality metric, but all that has to center around our mission and our leadership principles and the vision that we have for the future. So I think that's the right way to think about it. Okay, that's great. And so then, from just our existing strategy, right? Like, there was an article that came out recently. I think it was on Marketplace Pulse, and maybe get some of your views on this. That said, hey, that the third-party sellers on Amazon are pretty much gone. I think it was like third-party sellers are dead or something. I don't know. It was some pretty harsh statements. So, what's your view, maybe Mitch, Brock, or any of you, on just your thoughts on kind of the more traditional third-party selling on marketplaces such as Amazon, where you're buying and you're reselling, you're buying, you're reselling. That reselling space, what are your thoughts on where that's going in the future?
So my my thoughts here is there's always going to be, we know, let me back up. So we know that third-party volume continues to outpace one-party volume, and each quarter over quarter, Amazon reports their metrics there. We're seeing the share, the distribution shift more towards third-party. Now that third-party population is made up of a variety of different types of organizations. It's made up of brands that are selling themselves. It's made up of third-party retailers acting as an intermediary, similar to Kaspien's retail model. My perspective is there is always going to be a place for the larger resellers, retailers, and we're gonna see their continue to have more voluminous players take more of that share, and the number of professional sellers, if you will, at that level continue to kind of shrink. And it's because it's a competitive environment. And this is a typical life cycle that you see in an environment or an economy that has that type of competition. But where I think we'll also see grow is the number of brands that are directly selling themselves. And the reason that is Amazon's creating an environment and a platform that is very, it enables brands to do that. So generally speaking, I believe that to be the case because I think there's always a type of brand persona that needs a retailer, a third-party reseller to help support their business. And it might not be a good acquisition target. It might not be, they might not have the capabilities internally to do this themselves. They might need a partner like Kaspien or some other very large retailer to help with working capital optimizations for their production schedules. Those are all things that we have architected our business model to be able to support for those types of brand personas that I believe will continue to need to engage brand or partners in that model. So will the size of the retail footprint, the resellers, will it shrink? I believe so, but will the density of it? I don't.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you think about resellers or just think about third-party selling, that's going nowhere. I mean, the GMV on that only continues to increase. And in fact, there was one statistic that said it's probably going to get closer to 75% relative to Amazon retail in the next few years. And I truly believe that. We're not too far away from that. I think those typical arbitrage opportunities that you probably saw in the past, that's probably going to go away, where you could just get something on Alibaba, try to resell it on Amazon with a slight margin increase there and try to make a quick arbitrage. I think some of that is going to just disappear over time. And if we think about just reselling in that sort of context, yes, those sellers will probably just disappear, as building a brand, in my view, omni-channel across everything online, including direct to consumer, becomes more front and center. So being able to build your brand and your brand presence on the internet as a whole is sort of critical in a digital space as a whole is critical. And kind of that's my view. One other disadvantage of Amazon at some level, like searches are unbranded, right? Like you typically don't go and search for, a certain brand shoes or something. You'll just search for, I'm looking for running shoes. And so that also makes it a little more difficult. And so how do you compete in that kind of environment? And you have to probably go off Amazon as well to be able to build your brand presence. So, but yeah, any other thoughts from you folks on kind of, where the third party selling space, the traditional retail space is going, and kind of your views on who will survive, who will not?
It's a good question. And just to build upon what Mitch said is, there's a tremendous opportunity for those that have the ability to scale. Like are there low barriers to entry to play in this market? Yes. But how do those barriers of entry change as you get larger and larger? And folks like our organization, we spent years developing inventory management software, so we know how much to ship and when. That's an area where a small brand or someone with less sophistication can quickly go over their skis because you can get hit with excess storage fees, you can hit with pricing issues, you can get hit with prep issues, penalties at Amazon. So making sure that you're optimizing for that, and so to Mitch's point is there's likely to be more consolidation in this industry, and folks like us who continue to put the brands first and try to make, and with the objective of making a friction-free experience for them, so they can focus on what it is that they do well, and we can focus on what we do well, and a rising tide is going to raise all ships. So I see a tremendous opportunity for us.
Yeah, I mean, let's not even get started on, all the compliance issues that come regularly, and, like you rightly said, if you have to go to international marketplaces, getting set up there and issues that might come there, legal issues. I mean, doing that at scale, can only be done in a cost-efficient manner with firms like Kaspien, or others out there as well. But by and large, those are kind of issues that some of these small players just wouldn't want to deal with. And even just as the marketplace regulation gets tighter and tougher, and that could just ooze some of these players out of the market because they just can't manage the operational overhead that comes along with this keeping your brand alive.
Kunal, I would also add, in the space of, in the spirit of technology innovation, regardless of whether the reseller or the customers are large or small, those that are able to harness the technology and to build into the hearts and minds of the customers the power of their brand will separate the winners from those that lag behind.
I'm with you. I mean, I keep telling people whenever this topic of conversation comes up is that you go back to the basics of business, right? As a whole, you're not building a brand, you're building a business. So what are the basics of the business? Well, you understand your customer, you have a product and or service that is differentiated. It's a true value proposition to the needs and wants of that customer. You have distribution channels such as Amazon, but not just Amazon. You have others as well. You diversify across distribution channels. You have a good competitive positioning in your market relative to all your competitors. Those are the basic elements of business building. And I think the brands that just follow those simple first principles of what it takes to build a good business, they're going to win at the end of the day, because they're not looking at quick arbitrage opportunities. They're looking at building a long-term business out of which marketplaces is one channel, and they're using that among everything else that they're doing. Great. So artificial intelligence, we talk about that a lot. Buzzword in the industry these days, AI, ML, data science. I certainly see the advantages that it provides, but maybe Lisa, throw a couple of use cases on how AI could be used, to improve a brand's experience. How could we leverage data better? Like, throw a couple of use cases so people get an idea of what the real examples here.
I mean, AI ML has been around in reality for quite a long time. The fact of the matter is, what makes it so enticing and so glamorous is the use case application and how it's being used to solve business problems. I mean, shiny, glamorous technology that sits on the shelf really doesn't do much for anybody. I mean, unless you're in an academic environment. I would say the two use cases that come to mind for us at Kaspien are financial forecasting, which has internal as well as external value. I mean, every organization under the sun, regardless of size or revenue generation, needs extremely accurate financial forecasting. Number two, specific to our business area, is margin calculators. And AI ML can be extremely beneficial in that we are not relying on old coding technology with if-then statements, basically a rules engine. We want intelligent ML generated margin calculators done. So our team is currently focused on those two areas, and the use cases are endless. It's just a question of where you want to invest your time and money to maximize the ROI, and whether we want the ROI internally facing first, or we want to focus on externally facing first and then leveraging the power internally. And my understanding is our approach at Kaspien right now for these type of use cases is let's generate the value, the ROI internally, and we can have that externally focused as a follow-on next step.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have 1,000 brands in our portfolio that are all great use cases for us to apply our technology on and build. In Microsoft, we used to use the phrase, eat your own dog food. So we can eat our own dog food here at Kaspien, test out our algorithms on our own brands that are in a retail partnership with us, and then extending that out to an agency partnership and or a software as a service partnership just becomes a breeze, and commercializing some of these offerings to the world is a lot easier once it's all tested internally, which has basically been our approach since day one as well. We've been building for internal first. I like this approach of margin calculator because I wonder if from an AI ML standpoint, you could just optimize for the best, you could optimize for the best contribution margin, for example, and decide on reordering.
Well, and the nice thing about AI ML for that use case is it will inherently become better over time, because the more we use it to calculate our margins, the more smart, the more intelligent the model gets.
Now, the CFO would be happy with that, right? I hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's always, and the reason I bring that up is because, especially in retail, for people listening who probably don't know, like finance and the business are in very close contact. Like that's just how the business works in retail specifically, and like finance sort of drives a lot of the day-to-day, the P&L management of a retail business, as opposed to if you go to a true traditional software business, the finance guys are sitting like somewhere in the basement. And in retail, like the finance folks are front and center. And so it's so critical that all our internal tools optimize for the financial P&L, because it's a critical part of how you run a retail business.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes our business really exciting is everything is so quantitative at every point of the business. And you think about the investments we've already made to quantify every individual SKU or every individual purchase at the SKU level, develop a score to measure how profitable and the impact of working capital, and that's just at the early innings here. And when we layer in these other technologies, AI capabilities, ML capabilities, and think about where we could take this, I think it's the sky's the limit here.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm even looking forward to, as we continue to expand, outside of the core marketplaces that we support, as Home Depot comes on board, Wayfair, like some of these other new marketplaces, Costco, hopefully Best Buy, like some of these come on board. I mean, being able to, again, do this at scale across marketplaces, do it internationally, connecting to various third-party logistics providers, warehouses in the back end, doing that across a portfolio for 1,000+ brands, managing 10,000, listings. If you don't have technology to be able to drive this, intelligent, smart technology to be able to drive this, you're not going to be able to run your business. In my view, like tech is a key investment that I know we are making, but anyone listening to this should certainly think about.
Yeah, I mean, another key piece about retail is it's not a sexy margin industry. So unless you have the operational scalability and efficiencies, it's very difficult to run a profitable business in this, because I know one of Brock's favorite quotes is there's 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and increased costs across the supply chain. So there is just additional pressure that's going to be seen. So that's an operations and technology first organization is the way to operate a sustainable business in this market.
Every year, I know all third-party sellers wait with a heavy breath for that Amazon email to come in that talks about cost increases in their warehouse. And that's just the reality of life. It's like, when is it coming? When should I open my email? Great, awesome. Okay, guys, I know we're running out of time. I know you have other stuff to do. I certainly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for all your thoughts. So we're looking forward to a new future at Kaspien. Congratulations to all of you for all the work that you did last year to get to the company to this stage. And we're looking to take it to its next level of evolution. Congratulations on the fundraise. And congratulations to all the employees, if you're listening to this as well, for all that you've done. And really, this is an opportunity for us to take the company to its next level of evolution, but more importantly, serve our brands with an increased value proposition that includes investments in our technology, but also through acquisitions while we grow our existing business lines. So thank you again, everyone. Take care, and we will see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Through conversations with experts in online retail, with years of marketing, compliance, and inventory management experience, we seek to empower our listeners to master the marketplace. Thanks for listening. We hope to see you next time on Master the Marketplace with Kaspien.